Hi everyone. I hope everybody is doing well. So we're going to go ahead and get started with the chapter of functions. So we need to talk about the significance and the importance of using functions. What is a function? Definition of functions. What are the different types of functions, and how we create? Because there are two things like create, how to create a function, and how to call the function. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's share the Visual Studio. So why do we need function? Let's use an example to simplify this concept of function. I'm sure you heard about functions in math. It's almost the same concept, but there are a few differences, couple of differences, but mainly the concept is the same. A function is the relationship between input and output. All right, let's have an example. Let's say you want to give a welcoming statement to new students, for example. So I'm going to put, for example, okay, his name or her name. So let's say Mike. So I'm going to put here, welcome Mike to computer science class. So I'm going to show you, like, through this example, the why we need to use function and how it is important. So I'm just going to put like let's say 3 or 4 sentences. So let's say, I hope you enjoy the class. Okay. Say, have a nice day, Mike. Okay. So let's say we have only these 3 statements. Welcome, Mike, to computer science class. I hope you enjoyed the class. Have a nice day, Mike. Let's say, happy learning. Happy learning. Okay, so let's say this statement. So if I run the program, you're going to see exactly what I have in here. So if I run, so you're going to see this. I'm not sure you're going to see this, so let me just share the output. So you're going to see this. Welcome, Mike, to computer science class. I hope you enjoyed the class. Happy learning. Have a nice day, Mike. Okay, that's all what you're going to see. Now, what about if I have another student who just joined the class and I want to do the same thing? So do I have to repeat this again? Do I have to, repeat typing this 4 statements? So with the function, you don't have to, since we're going to be doing the same thing except changing the name. So that would be a very good example for using a function. So instead of typing this all over again with new name, what we can do, we can create a function that we can use over and over. So how do we create a function? So I'm going to, so there are 2 types of function. There's one called void. We're going to see the difference between void and return function. So return function returns something. It could be a number, it could be a string, it could be true or false, but it returns something, okay, that you can either save in a variable. Like, for example, if it's a return integer, you can save it in integer. So let's start with the void function first. So void function basically does not return anything. It's just like makes something or make some change or print something, but does not return anything. So if I put welcome, so that's the name of the function, welcome. And then since the only thing that changes is the name, so that I'm going to put a parameter for that. It's a string. I'm going to put name. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to copy these 4 sentences or 4 statements. I'm going to put them here. The only difference, I'm going to change Mike with name, the variable name, because it keeps changing. So I'm going to put all of this in here. I'm going to cut this. and then put it in here. But I have to, okay. So I'm going to cut this and then print it here. So I'm going to put welcome. So when I have Mike, so I'm going to close it and then put name here, name, and then open it again. So welcome name, whatever the name is, to computer science class. Okay. And then the second one does not have the name, so I'm going to keep it intact. And then the third, happy learning, then have a nice day, Mike, again. So I'm going to close the quotation, and then I'm going to put name in here. And then name Mike. Okay. So now if I run the program, nothing will happen because I have to call the function in the main function. Okay. So if I run the program, as I said, nothing will happen. You're going to see just an empty. See, I'm going to show you. So you just have an empty because I did not call the function. So let me give you like an example, like an analogy, so you can something you can relate to. So let's say, for example, you have a problem or an issue in the AC in your house. So you have two options. Either you can fix it yourself if you know how, or you can call the AC guy to fix it for you. Now the AC guy is already in his shop, okay, just waiting for your call. The AC is not going to come by himself. He needs to wait until you call him, and then when you call him, then he will bring the tools and then fix the problem for you. This is the same thing function. So function is just sitting there, and then you have to call the function. How do we call the function? So in the main, we just mentioned the name of the function, welcome. And then inside the parentheses, can you see it says string? I need to come up with something of type string, which represent the name. So if I put, for example, here, Mike. So that means go to the function called welcome, replace name with the actual value Mike. So now when I run the program, you're going to see the entire statement. So let me share with you the output. So you're going to see welcome Mike to computer science class. I hope you enjoyed the class. Happy learning. Have a nice day, Mike. Now, what about if I have another student? So we're going to do the same thing. So I'm going to go right here. I can just like skip a line. And then call the function, because you can call the function over and over again. So let me see a different name. Let's say, oh, Katie. So if you run the program, you're going to see again, it's the same thing. So let me share the screen for the output. So you're going to see the same thing. Can you see, welcome Katie to computer science class. I hope you enjoy the class. Happy learning. Have a nice day. And then you can have it, you can call the function over and over. There is no limit how many times you can call the function. So this is basically what the function does. Okay. So, so as I mentioned, we have two types of functions. We have void, so it just does something, like print something or make change, but it does not return anything. Let's have one more example about the void, and then we talk about the return one. Let's say we want to create a function called factors. It's void factors. It accepts a number, an integer. So I'm going to call it num. Okay. And then it prints all the factors, all the divisors of that number. For example, if I call the function factors and I use number 6, it should show 1, 2, 3, all the divisors. If I use 12, it should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, not including the number itself. Okay, so here in this case, so I'm going to use the loop. So I'm going to put start from 1 all the way to the number, but don't include the number itself. And then if if the remainder is 0 when you divide num by every single value from 1 to the number, then it is a factor. It should be displayed. So I'm going to put here if num, and then I'm going to use the remainder. Remember the remainder, the percentage sign, to check if the remainder is 0. That means it's divisible. So if num is divisible, like for example 6, you're going to divide 6 by 1, the remainder is 0, so that means 1 is a factor or a divisor. The same thing for 2, the same thing for 3, but not 4, because when you divide 6 by 4, you have a remainder 2. So if, then I will print. So I'm going to put print I, the number. Okay? So again, when I run the program, you're not going to see anything because you have to call the function. Where do we call the function? We call it in the main function. So I'm going to go down. I'm sorry, here I didn't put the I. Divide num by I, and remainder is 0. So I'm going to go to the main function. Now I'm going to comment this one out so they don't show in the output. And then I will call factors. So if I call the function factors, I'm going to call just like what I did with welcome. So the name of the function, and then if there is any, so you're going to have to replace your variable, in our case num, with an actual number. So let's start with, let's say 12. So what's going to happen is the program will look for the function called factors, as you can see right here. And then it would start dividing 12 by every single value from 1 to 11, because we don't want to include the number itself. So 12 divided by 1, yes, the remainder is 0. Okay, print 1. The same thing for 2, 3, 4, not 5. I'm sorry, 4 now. No, not 4, not 5, but 6 is also will be displayed. So if I run the program, let me run it. So you're going to see 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. Again, you're not going to be able to see it. So let me share the output. So you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. So this is how the function works. So this is void. Okay. Now, let's talk about the other type of functions. We call them return functions. So basically, the return functions return something, and that something could be an integer, any one of the data type that you are familiar with. It could be int, it could be char, it could be string, it could be double, it could be bool, and stuff like that. Okay, so let's have an example of that. So we're going to go right here and then create the function. Let's say we have a function. All what it does, it accepts two numbers and then return the average. Okay, or let's start with the sum first. So when I add two numbers, of course, I get another number. So that's why we start with int. That means that's the return. That's the type. That's the data type of what I'm going to get back. Because if I ask you, can you add 4 and 3? So the number, the return is 7, which is another number. So we put data type of the result first. And then I will give it a name, add, or maybe sum. And then I need two variables, or we call them parameters. So A and B, you can call it anything you want. You don't have to call them that. As long as they are two integers, so you can call them A and B, num1, num2, anything. And then you're going to put the return A plus B. This is the function right there. So this function, all what it does, it returns, it adds the two numbers and then gives you the answer back. So if I go right here, let me skip a line so there's no confusion with the previous answer. And then and L. So if I call the function now, since there is no print, so we're going to have the answer, but it's going to be in the memory. I have to print it. So I'm going to have to use cout this time. So before we did not use cout because it's already inside the function prints. But here we don't have print, see out. So we have only return. It's going to stay in the memory, but you're not going to be able to see it. So if I put like this, sum, let's say 10, comma 20. So I call the function, but it's going to stay in the memory. Why? Because there is nothing that will print it. So that's why I have to use cout here. So see, this is how we print. So since this function return, so it's going to print whatever is returned, which is the sum. So now if I run the program, let me share my screen. So you're going to see the sum, which is 30 right there. I mean, I can add a description if you want to. You can add description so you know what 30 stands for or what does it represent. So I'm going to put right here, the sum is the sum of 10 and 20 is, so this way you know what the answer is. So I'm going to run it, and then you should be able to see the output. See that? The sum of 10 and 20, did I put 29? Oh, I was supposed to put 20. 20 is there, I just made a typo here, it's supposed to be 20. Okay, so this is how the function works. Okay, but this is a return. It returns what? In this case, it returns integer, but it could return anything you want it to return, any of the data type that we learn. Okay, so it should be 20 here. Okay, now what about if I don't want the sum, I want the average? Okay, that's fine. So we're going to put here the average, and then I will divide by, so make sure that you add them up, or I can add them up first. Then I can create like a little local variable here. Let's call the total, for example. That's A plus B, and then I will return total divided by 2. I'm going to put 2.0 because remember, integer over integer, you will get only the integer part of the number. So you're not going to be able to see the, or you can, if you don't want to divide by 2.0, just declare this. I think at average is better to have it double, because usually the average comes with the decimal. So we are going to put this as double. So this function, all what it does, it accepts two numbers that are integer. It will add them up for you and then give you the average by dividing by 2. Okay, so now let's use the same one, average. So let's say, the average of 10 and 20 is, now let's run the program. So it's going to show into 15. Okay, so let me show you the output. See that? The average of 10 and 20 is 15, and that's correct. Okay, so this is an example of a return function. So let's have another example, so this way it will make more sense to you. Let me create another function. Let's say it returns true or false depending whether the number is even or odd. So the return, in this case, the return type is bool, because that's the one that decides if it's true or false. And I'm going to call it is even. So it accepts a number. I call it anything. I'm going to call it val or value. So now I'm going to put an if statement. If value mod, because I have to use the modulus symbol. So if it is divisible by 2, then it is an even. That means I'm going to return true. Remember, whatever you are returning, it should match with the return type that you have in the header. They have to match, or you're going to get an error for mismatch. Now, else means if it's not divisible, then you're going to return false. See? So that's another function. It returns true or false depending on whether the number is even or odd. Now, again, it's not going to take effect until you call the function in the main one. So let's say here, I'm going to put C out. Yeah, let me put here the end of line so there is no confusion here. So I'm going to put here, so what's the name of the function? Let's say I want to say is 19 even. Ask the question before I call the function. So now I'm going to call the function is even, and then I'm going to put 19. So if it says true or 1, because 1 represents 2, so 1 and 2 means the same thing in C++. 0 and false means the same thing. So now if I run the program, it's going to call the function is even, and then is 19 mod 2 equals to 0? No, so it's going to go to else and return false. So let's run the program. So let me share my output screen. So see, it shows 0 in here. Is 19 even? 0. 0 means false, okay? And then 1 means true. So that's another type of return type, okay? Let's have an example. Let's say I want a function that returns let's say it takes a string, and then return, let's say, the number of spaces in that string. So number of spaces, that would be integer, right? So let me call it num spaces. You can call it anything you want. And it accepts a string. I'm going to call it sentence, just the name of the variable. So this function accepts any string. String is a bunch of characters, right? And then I want to know how many empty spaces I have. So of course I need a variable so we can count. I'm going to call it C. Let me call it just total or count. Let me call it count. And then I'm going to go through visit every single character in my sentence. So I'm going to use the loop starting from 0. Remember, the string is index based. The first character has index 0, the second one 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way to the end. Less than whatever the length is, I'm going to put sentence dot length. That means whatever the length is the sentence is, so I have to visit every single character, go one at a time. So basically what we're saying here is for every, I have empty parentheses here, for every character in the sentence, in the string, check if it matches with space. So I'm going to put here f sentence, and then we use at to check every single character. So at I, so that means sentence that at 0 is the first character. Sentence that at 1, that's the second character, and so on. So it's going to keep repeating this, and then if it matches with empty space, then we want to count it. So we're going to increment the variable by 1, count plus plus. Okay, once you are done with the entire sentence, then you return the number, which is count. So this function, it accepts a string, any string, and then it counts how many empty spaces in there. So let's call this function so we can have an example. So let me and this. So I'm going to use cout and then come up with, so the name is called num spaces. And then I'm going to put like a sentence in string. So let's say, for example, C++ is a cool programming language. Okay. So how many empty spaces we have in this string or sentence? So we have 1 right here after C++, and then we have 2 between A's and A, So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the answer should be 5. If we don't have 5, then there is something wrong. So let's call the function. Let me share my screen. And then you're going to see, sure enough, we got 5 right here. So that means there are 5 spaces. Then if you want to count, like let's say not the spaces, you want to count how many dots or how many question marks or how many A's we have or B's or whatever character you are looking for, you can just adjust or modify your function a little and then you can use it, okay? So you just have to change the space with whatever character you are looking for, okay? So to change it, you could just go right here. So for spaces, you can put, for example, A, how many A's we have, how many B's, how many, whatever character you are looking for. Okay, so that's another example of a function. Okay, let's say another function. Let's say a triangle, for example. Let's say a triangle. We want to know what is the area of the triangle. So for that, okay, let me see here. Where is the end of this sentence? Oh, I didn't see it because it was on the left. I was looking at the braces, make sure that we have the braces here. All right, so let me create another function. So it accepts a base and height of a given triangle, and it will return the area. So now the area is most likely to be a decimal number, so we should use double as a return type, okay? And then I'm going to call it area triangle. So it accepts base, could call it base, and then height. So I wanted to return the area. So you're going to put, either you can save it in a variable or you can return it right away. So return base times height divided by 2. Okay. So this is another function that returns double. So I'm going to go right here and go all the way to the end and then and L and then call the function here. So let's say you want to calculate the area of a triangle that has the following base. Let's say 10 and 8. So triangle. Okay, so if I call this function, see I have 40 here. Share my screen. Okay, so that's the, as you can see, our area is 40 because 80, I'm sorry, 8 times 10, that's 80 divided by 2 is 40. So that's the exact answer. All right, so this is how the function works. Again, let me summarize. We said a function is basically a block of code, like a certain number, set of statements that that perform a specific task. And then we have two types of functions. We have one that is void. It does not return anything. It just performs something, but it does not return anything. And then we have the one that returns either double, string, char, integer. So it does return something here. Now, we have two things. What about if, like here, there is, let's say I moved, and just an example, let's say I have these factors right here, okay? What happened if I have these functions below the main function? Does it still work? So if I move it from here and I moved it below the main function, does it work or not? So let's run the program and see if it is working or not. So if I run the program, oh, I got an error here. That doesn't mean it's not. So if you don't have if you don't have your functions above the main functions, you have to use what we call the prototype. The prototype basically is like just like the header. You put your header, and then it's like you put only the header or the basically the signature of the functions, but the rest, the details are below the main function. So for factors, so you're gonna put the following: void factors, and then you put int. So this is called prototype. Now the rest of the code is at the bottom, right? But you have to. So if you put the function is on top, you don't have to do this. So this is if you have the functions below the main functions. So it's like a way to tell the program that yes, there is a function called factors, it is a void, and it accepts an integer. All the details are below. Okay, so now it should be working with no problem. See that? It does work with no issues, and we didn't get any error or anything like that. See, it's working. So this is called a prototype. So for example, if I want to put all of them below, so I just have to do the same thing. Like for average, again, so you're gonna put double average and then put two integers, int, comma, int. That's it. You don't even have to mention the variables or anything, just to type. Okay, so now I can move this function and then put it at the bottom. So the same thing for, excuse me. So the same thing for the rest of the function, okay? There's also something called default arguments. Let me give you an example here. Let's say I want to calculate the average, this one right here, okay? And then I want to, like, in case the functions doesn't have like an argument, does not have numbers, it's just empty parentheses, then we can provide like a default argument. Let me give you an example. Let's say average, okay? So if I call the function average, like for example, right here, and then I forgot, or I don't have this information, and I put this, of course it's not gonna work because the function is expecting two numbers of type integer. If you don't have them, then the function is not gonna work. But I can do the following. I can say, okay, if the user did not provide these numbers, then just use this default values, which is, let's say 10 and then 20. Okay, 10, 20. So now, even though like in the main function, as you can see, so there is nothing, just average and empty parentheses. So the program will replace A with 10 and B with 20. So now when you run the program, you should have no error, and then they will be replaced by the default values 10 and 20. See, it works fine. As you can see, 10 plus 20, 30 divided by 2, 15. Okay. Now, what about if I have only one, but I don't have the other one? The same thing, okay? So for example, if I have average and then I put only, let's say 5. So what is that supposed to mean? That means I do have A, which is 5, but I don't have B. So it will be replaced by 20. So now we have 5 plus 20, 25 divided by 2. So let's run the program and see. If I run the program, you're going to see that B will be replaced by 20. So let me share my screen, and then you can see the results. Can you see the answer is 12.5? Where does 12.5 come from? Well, remember, we have A, that's 5. but we don't have the second number. So automatically it will replace by 20. So we have 20 plus 5, 25 divided by 2, 12.5. So that's where the 12.5 comes from. So this is in case the user did not provide the necessary, the required values. You can use the default argument. Okay? So this is basically how the function works. Now, let me take a few minutes and then go over the assignment that I gave you, and then see if you have any questions or how it should be done. So let me stop this and then let me open. Let's see, this one. Yes, this is okay. So as you can see right here, so you have this following program number 1. So that should be very similar to what we did, right? So we put write a program that calculates the perimeter and area of a rectangle. The program should prompt the user to enter the width and the length and call the following functions to display the perimeter and area of a given rectangle information. So basically you are going to prompt the user, get that information, and then call the function. So let me share my screen and then give you an example of that. So let me just delete all this stuff right here. Okay, so all this, and then show you an example of that. Now I give you the example at the bottom of the page, but let me just show you an example here in Visual Studio. So let me just delete all of this. So this is where we have enough space. Okay. So let's say you put the function here. So we have, let's say, let me use a triangle as an example. So we have area triangle. Okay. And then we know that the area of triangle is base. So let's say I have base and then I have heights. Okay. So this is the function. It should be done separately. Return base times height divided by 2. So that's the function. Now in the main functions, you need to prompt the user to enter the base. So we need a variable. So I'm going to put here b for base and then heights. Okay. And then I'm going to prompt the user to enter this information. Enter the base of your triangle. And then I will save it. Or you can save them both of them at the same time. So I was in CIN, I can put B. So it will be saved. And then I'm going to do the same thing for heights. So copy it and then replace base with heights. And then I'm going to use H here. So now I do have the information from the user. So now it's time to call the function. So I'm going to say cout. The area of the triangle is, so now I'm going to call the function. What is the function name? Area triangle. Area triangle. And then let me have some space. So and then I'm going to open the button because the function requires 2 numbers, base and height, which I do have, b and h. So I just have to put b, comma, h, and then the function will be called. Okay, so now let me show you how it's going to run. Run the program. Now let me share my screen so you can see what's happening. Can you see? Enter the base of your triangle. So let's say I'm going to put 10. Hit the enter key, enter the height, say 5. So now it's going to call the function, do the calculation, give you the answer back. Because remember, this function returns something. Okay, so it will be printed. Can you see that 25? Where does 25 come from? So 10 times 5, 50 divided by 2 is 25. So this is basically what I'm asking you to do here. But you're not going to do it for the triangle, you're going to do it for the rectangle. It's the same thing. But instead of using base and height, you are going to use the width and length. Is that clear? Okay, so let me share the program again. Okay, so that's what I'm asking in program number 1. So using the rectangle, so you're going to create 2 functions, one to calculate the perimeter, just like what we did just a few minutes ago, and then get area. So you're going to have the function outside the main function. And then in the main function, you're going to prompt the user to enter this information, enter the length, enter the width, and then call the function inside the main function, just like what we did. That's why I give you the example here at the bottom. Can you see it? But this function is for add and subtract. So you create the function outside the main functions. You prompt the user to enter the required information, first number, second number, and then I call the add function that's going to add, and then also call the subtract function to subtract the numbers. Okay, so that's how it should be done. Now here you're going to do the same thing for program number 2. Program number 2, basically you are going to prompt the user. You're going to create a function called slope to find the slope. Now here, for your convenience, I gave you the formula. Okay, that means you're going to prompt the user. That means this function, okay, this function, it accepts 4 integers, x1 and y1 for the first point, and then x2, y2 for the second point. So you're going to create a function, double slope, with all these parameters, and then inside you're going to apply this. You're going to put return y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. That's it. That's the slope. And then you're going to create another function called distance that calculates this distance between these 2 points. x1, y1, that's the first point. x2, y2, that's the second point. And then you're going to use this formula. Now, it may look complicated, but it's not. Why? Because we learned about how to calculate the square root. Remember, you have to use a package or a preprocessor called CMath. Remember, if you forgot, then you need to go back to that chapter in which we learned how to use the different math functions like max, like min, like floor, like ABS, absolute value, like POW, POW for the power, and then SQRT for square root. So you may want to go back and watch that video or go over the PowerPoint so you can kind of refresh your mind about that. So for this one, you have all this information, x1, y1, x2, y2. So first one, you are going to square using POW. You're going to put x2 minus POW, x2 minus x1, comma 2. That's power. And then you add y2 minus y1, comma 2 using POW. And then you're going to put the square root of the entire thing. That's what needs to be returned. Okay? So for example here, let me just make sure that you are on the right. So for example here, so when the functions here for the distance, so you're going to put something like that, distance. So you're going to put here x1, y1, x2. I'm just going to show me, I'm just going to put you in the right direction. I'm not going to do it for you. Okay, so what did we say? What is the distance? Square root. First one, before you do that, you have to go back, go to the top, all the way to the top. Remember, we need to include CMath, because CMath this is where all the math functions are located. So without using this, it's not going to work for you, okay? You're going to get an error. Okay, so once you include that CMath, then you are going to apply the distance formula. Okay, so you're going to put either here, you have the choice, you can save them in a variable, or you can just return directly. Okay, so for example right here, let's say You can put in return, and then you're going to put sqrt, because that the whole thing you need to find the square root of that. And then here you're going to add 2 powers. Okay, the first one is pow, always pow, and then you put x2 minus x1. So, and then you put comma 2. Comma means square. Okay, so comma, that means the exponents should be after comma. And then you're going to do the same thing for y2 minus 1, just on the right side. Comma, and then you're going to put the y here. So y2 minus y1 square. Right here, y1. Okay, so that's basically how I should be doing it. See, how x2 minus x1 comma 2, that means square, and then y2 minus 1 comma 2 means square, and then the whole thing should be square, should apply the square root. Okay, and then of course you have to do the slope, and then in the main functions you're going to prompt the user enter x1, enter x2, and y1, enter x2, and then you're going to call the functions just like what we did with the other function. I hope this is clear. All right, so that's pretty much about the functions. I hope this video, or you find this video useful and beneficial. If you still have any other questions, please let me know. You can email me. All right, okay, that should be it. Thank you very much.